The alarm on my tablet flashed red at the exact moment thunder shook the cabin windows. Guest room sensor open. I crossed the hallway before the second alert sounded. Rain hammered the tin roof, and the power flickered hard enough to turn the corridor lamps blue. I pushed Valerie Morgan's door open without knocking. She froze beside the bed, fully dressed in navy lounge pants and a cream sweater buttoned to the collar. One hand was buried beneath a folded wool blanket at the foot of the mattress. Her other hand gripped the bedpost. "How much did you see?" she asked. "Enough to know I entered without permission." I stepped backward into the hall and pulled the door nearly closed. "I'm sorry." The sensor reported an open window, but I should have knocked. "Are you safe?" For 3 seconds, only the rain answered. "I'm safe," she said through the narrow opening. The window latch slipped when the power changed. "May I come back in?" "Yes, stay by the door." I reopened it and stopped at the threshold. Valerie drew a black burner phone from beneath the folded blanket. Its screen showed a message preview before she turned it face down. "When you asked how much I saw," I said, "you meant the message." She nodded once. Julian contacted me again. The cabin was not a place where I had confined her. Valerie had selected it herself from 3 secure work locations after consulting Claire Parker, her attorney. It had stable satellite service, 1 access road, no staff, and enough distance from the city to reduce unplanned contact during the weekend. Claire had also drafted the written 72-hour agreement under which Valerie retained me. I was a crisis negotiator, not her lawyer, digital examiner, bodyguard, or corporate officer. My limited role was to help her control the tempo of communications, prepare for difficult conversations, and document decisions she authorized. Claire handled the law. An independent forensic laboratory handled the disputed audio. Valerie remained the decision-maker. The opposing pressure was already explicit. Julian Foster, her former business partner, wanted Valerie's controlling shares in Morgan North Architecture. He possessed a convincing deepfake recording that made it sound as if she had offered proprietary blueprints to a competitor. He threatened to send it to the board unless she signed his transfer agreement. 2 practical barriers made the threat dangerous even if the audio was false. The company's morality clause allowed the board to impose a temporary suspension after a credible allegation of corporate espionage. At the same time, the firm's largest project, the Reynolds Civic Center, required an authorized executive signature by Tuesday noon. If the board suspended Valerie before the forensic review began, the client could pause the contract and hundreds of employees would lose scheduled work. Walking away, paying Julian, or waiting silently were not clean exits. Claire needed preserved evidence before she could seek formal relief. The board needed a defensible process before refusing to trigger the clause. Valerie needed time without surrendering her shares. "I hid the phone because our plan said no private replies," Valerie said. "I thought I could look without answering." Looking is your decision. Hiding it creates an evidence problem, but it doesn't give me the right to take it. But I kept both hands visible. "Would you like privacy to call Claire, or would you like me present?" Valerie's shoulders lowered a fraction. "Present, but I want to explain it to her myself." "All right." She carried the burner phone into the main room. I waited until she had passed before following. The remote cabin's kitchen and living room shared one long space. A stone fireplace faced a raw wood table where my encrypted laptop sat closed beside an untouched evidence log. Wind pressed wet pine branches against the windows. The fire had burned low, leaving the room scented with cedar smoke and the coffee Valerie had made an hour earlier. She sat at the table and opened a video call to Claire. Claire appeared in a navy cardigan, reading glasses low on her nose. "Tell me exactly what happened." Valerie did. She described the message, the burner phone, and my unannounced entry without minimizing any part of it. "Elias apologized and stepped out," she finished. "I invited him back in. I want him present for this call." Claire looked toward me. "Thank you for correcting the boundary. Valerie, do you consent to preserving the device under the evidence protocol we discussed?" "Yes. Read-only capture by the independent lab. No reply until I approve one." Good. I'll bring Priya Shah into the call. Dr. Priya Shah joined from an accredited digital forensics laboratory. She instructed Valerie to photograph the screen with a second device, record the time, and place the phone in airplane mode without opening the attachment. Valerie performed each step herself. I entered only the actions she described into the log. The laboratory can create a forensic image remotely through our secured appliance, Priya said. I can preserve the message data tonight, but any conclusion about the audio will be preliminary until my team completes authentication. Valerie looked at me. Do you recommend that I allow the capture? Yes, because it preserves options without committing you to a response. The choice remains yours. She turned back to Priya. Proceed. The secure appliance gave one soft tone when the transfer began. Valerie wrapped both hands around her coffee mug, watching the progress bar. The ceramic clicked faintly against the wooden table each time thunder moved through the valley. Claire reviewed the new message after Priya preserved it. Julian had moved his deadline to midnight Sunday. He demanded that Valerie sign a transfer of shares and resign before Tuesday's board meeting. I will send a preservation notice to his counsel and the company's audit committee, Claire said. I will not claim the allegation is disproven until Priya reports. Valerie, do you want to notify the board chair tonight or wait for the preliminary analysis? Valerie studied the rain beyond the window. Notify the chair that an extortion demand exists and that evidence is being preserved. Do not send the audio yet. I want Priya's first assessment attached when the committee sees it. Claire made a note. Your decision is recorded? When the call ended, Valerie pushed her cooling coffee aside. I broke our plan, she said. You corrected it before replying. It sounds like something printed on an employee training poster. Mine would have fewer colors. The corner of her mouth lifted. And smaller font. Efficient font. She stood and carried both mugs to the counter. Your coffee is cold. Cold coffee still contains caffeine. That is the saddest thing you've said all weekend. She made a fresh pot while Priya's transfer continued. The small domestic sound of water entering the machine softened the room more effectively than any speech I could have offered. At 9 that evening, Priya returned with an initial technical observation. The disputed recording contained discontinuities in its ambient sound. Valerie's supposed confession shifted between two different HVAC signatures, and several breaths repeated with identical waveforms. Those are indicators of synthetic assembly, Priya explained, but they are not yet a final opinion. I need the original file, comparison recordings, and Julian's distribution path. Can you complete a preliminary letter before Tuesday morning? Claire asked. I can state what the artifacts support and what remains unverified. I cannot promise a final attribution. Valerie nodded. That's enough for an interim board decision. I do not want anything overstated. The burner phone vibrated inside the secured appliance. Julian was calling. No one reached for it. I looked at Valerie. You have 3 choices. Let it go unanswered. Have Claire reply in writing. Or answer with Claire and me present. If you choose the call, Julian must be told it is being recorded. What would answering accomplish? She asked. It might reveal whether he controls the file and what he wants. It also risks giving him another chance to pressure you. There is no guaranteed result. Claire leaned closer to her camera. From a legal perspective, I prefer a written reply. If Valerie chooses a call, I will remain on the line and give the recording notice. The phone stopped vibrating, then started again. Valerie placed her palm flat on the table. I want the call. I will speak first. Claire gives the notice. Elias may help with pacing, but he does not answer for me. Understood, I said. Priya disconnected after confirming the capture was complete. Claire began the recorded conference line, and Valerie connected the burner phone through it. Julian, she said, her voice clear. Claire Parker, my attorney, and Elias Thomas, my communications consultant, are present. Claire added, this call is being recorded and preserved. If you continue speaking, you acknowledge that notice. A pause crackled across the speaker. You turned this into a circus? Julian said. Valerie did not look at me. You sent me a fabricated recording and demanded my shares. If you have a legitimate business proposal, send it to Claire. The audio is legitimate enough for the board, he replied. Sign the transfer by midnight tomorrow, or every director and every reporter on my list receives it. Claire's pen moved across her pad. Valerie's fingers tightened once around the mug, then relaxed. I will not transfer my shares under threat. All future communication goes through counsel. Julian laughed without warmth. When the Reynolds client walks, remember you chose this. I raised one finger, the signal Valerie had authorized for a pacing question. She nodded. Mr. Foster, I said, you have stated your demand. Is there anything you need Valerie to understand before she ends the call? She has until midnight. Valerie pressed the disconnect button herself. Rain surged against the windows. Claire saved the recording to the evidence portal and confirmed its receipt. The call tied the share demand directly to the threatened release, she said. I will update the board chair and prepare a report for the appropriate authorities. Valerie, I need your approval before I submit either. You have it. Send the board notice tonight. File the extortion report in the morning with the recording, messages, and Priya's preliminary findings. I'll send both drafts for your review first. After Claire left the call, Valerie remained at the table. The fire popped behind us, sending one spark against the screen. Would you like me to stay here or give you the room? I asked. Stay, not as a negotiator for 5 minutes. I closed the evidence log. All right. She poured the fresh coffee and placed one mug in front of me. Steam fogged the lower edge of my glasses. What do crisis negotiators talk about when they are not negotiating? She asked. Usually weather. Thunder rolled over the cabin. Excellent choice. I tried again. The coffee is better. That is not conversation. That is an inspection result. It passed. Her laugh was brief, but it loosened something in the room. We spent the next 10 minutes discussing the cabin's crooked bookshelf, a topic with no shareholders, deadlines, or threats attached to it. Near midnight, the access road camera sent another alert. This time I knocked on Valerie's open door before speaking. A vehicle stopped at the lower gate, I said. Would you like to see the camera feed? Yes. The night vision image showed a courier van beneath the trees. The driver remained inside, holding a waterproof envelope against the steering wheel. An email arrived from Julian seconds later. The signature pages are at your gate, 10 minutes. Valerie read it twice. I want the sheriff's office notified. The courier may know nothing about this. Agreed. May I call the non-emergency line while you update Claire? Yes. The dispatcher advised us not to approach the vehicle during the storm. A deputy was already 20 minutes away because of fallen branches, through the gate intercom. Valerie told the driver to place the envelope in the weatherproof delivery box and leave. She did not identify the contents or accuse him of wrongdoing. The driver complied, photographed the closed box, and drove away. Julian's 10-minute deadline passed without a signature. Nothing exploded into instant victory. The board portal did not magically clear Valerie's name. The phone simply remained quiet while rainwater raced along the cabin gutters. Deputy Morgan arrived 34 minutes later. He photographed the sealed delivery box, collected the envelope with gloves, and documented its receipt. Valerie gave him Claire's contact information and the report number. The deputy explained that investigators would decide what could be established. He made no promise of an arrest or charge. Once his vehicle disappeared down the access road, Valerie locked the cabin door herself. I expected relief, she said. Instead, I feel as if I handed the problem to a larger room. You did. Larger rooms move more slowly. Do they serve coffee? Not good coffee. She considered that. Then we should sleep while we still have hours. Before heading down the hallway, I stopped beside the guest room door. I will knock every time, I said. And if the sensor reports an emergency, I will call your name first unless there is an immediate threat to life. Good. She touched the latch and found the loose screw that had caused the alert. Tomorrow. We fix this with a screwdriver. No crisis protocol required. I will wait for authorization. Granted, Sunday morning arrived behind a wall of gray rain. Claire sent Valerie 2 drafts, a confidential notice to the board's audit chair and a report supplement for investigators. Valerie edited both herself, corrected the Reynolds deadline, and approved them. Priya's laboratory obtained the original audio attachment from the preserved phone by afternoon. She identified 11 repeated waveform segments and a mismatch between the recording's encoded creation time and the date Julian claimed it had been made. My preliminary opinion is that the file contains strong indicators of synthetic manipulation, Priya said on video. I cannot yet identify who created it. That will require source records and lawful access to relevant accounts. State exactly that, Valerie replied. No more and no less. Claire attached Priya's signed letter, the recorded demand, and the preserved messages to the board notice. The audit chair acknowledged receipt and scheduled an emergency session for Tuesday morning before the Reynolds signature deadline. The morality clause allows temporary suspension, Claire explained, but it does not require the board to treat an unverified file as established fact. I will request a stay while an independent committee investigates. Valerie turned toward me. What should I prepare for the meeting? I can help you rehearse hostile questions and keep your answers concise. Claire should decide the legal arguments. Priya should explain the audio. Then that is the plan. For the rest of Sunday, I challenged Valerie with the questions Julian's allies were likely to ask. Why did she retreat to a cabin? I selected a secure work location after receiving an extortion threat. I remained available to counsel. The board chair and investigators. Why should the board trust her? It should trust documented evidence and an independent process, not my confidence. Why not resign temporarily to protect the firm? Because surrendering authority under a fabricated allegation would reward coercion. I support neutral oversight while the evidence is tested. Each answer became shorter. Valerie did not need me to give her a voice. She needed a room where she could test the one she already had. At 6, I found her studying the same page for the 4th time. Would you like another question? I asked. No, I would like you to take this document away from me for 30 minutes. Do I have permission to close the file? Please. I shut the folder. Valerie went to the kitchen and returned with tomato soup and grilled cheese made in a cast-iron pan. High-level corporate crisis cuisine, she said. The diagonal cut suggests confidence. The burned corner suggests realism. We ate by the fireplace while the storm weakened. The burner phone remained sealed across the room. For half an hour, Valerie talked about the first model she had ever built, a cardboard library that collapsed because she used too much glue. I told her about my first negotiation, when a broken vending machine caused a louder argument than the dispute I had been called to resolve. The ordinary stories did not solve the case. They reminded us that the case was not the whole of either life. Monday morning, the rain softened to a steady tap. The road crew cleared the fallen branches, and Claire confirmed that the evidence had reached investigators. The Reynolds client agreed to hold its signature deadline until Tuesday afternoon after receiving a confidential notice from the board chair. That extension did not guarantee the contract. It preserved a narrow window. My 72-hour agreement ended at noon. Valerie reviewed the activity log, confirmed that all recordings had transferred to Claire, and watched me delete the working copies from my device under the retention protocol. Once you leave this cabin, you no longer represent me, she said. Correct. Claire and the board's outside counsel take it from here. And Tuesday? I will attend only as a factual witness if the committee requests me. I will not advise you during deliberations. She signed the closeout page. Then your invoice goes to Claire's office, not to me personally. As agreed. The line between us had never felt cold. It felt clean. We returned to the city in separate cars. Valerie drove with Claire, carrying no original evidence because the preserved devices had already entered controlled storage. I followed the mountain road alone, passing wet guardrails and streams swollen by the storm. At the first overlook, my phone displayed a routine message from another client. I did not answer until I had parked and confirmed that the cabin engagement was formally closed. That afternoon, Claire convened one final preparation call. She invited me as a former consultant and reminded everyone that Valerie could end my participation at any point. Priya showed the team a simple diagram of the audio file. Green blocks represented authentic source fragments. Red lines marked repeated transitions and inconsistent room noise. She avoided technical theater and stated the limits of her work twice. "This supports manipulation," she said. "It does not yet identify the person who assembled or distributed the recording." Valerie added the sentence to her board notes. "If anyone asks whether Julian created it, my answer is that the investigation has not established that yet." Claire nodded. "Exactly. We prove only what the evidence can carry." The board chair had requested a written operational plan in case Valerie's authority was temporarily restricted. Rather than resisting the request, she prepared one. It identified 2 independent directors who could countersign the Reynolds contract, a secure method for blueprint access, and a communication plan for employees that did not repeat the false allegation. "This is not a resignation plan," Valerie said. "It is proof that the company can remain stable while the board evaluates facts." I asked the question most likely to provoke her. "Does offering temporary oversight make you look uncertain?" She turned one page and answered without rushing, "No, it makes me accountable. Uncertainty belongs to the evidence, not to my willingness to protect the firm." Claire stopped writing. "Keep that answer." After the call, Valerie sent me the witness request issued by the audit chair. I acknowledged it without editing her statement or offering strategy beyond my former scope. At the bottom of her message, beneath the formal signature block, she had added one line. "The coffee at headquarters is worse than the cabin coffee. Prepare accordingly." I packed my own thermos. Tuesday morning. The glass boardroom at Morgan North Architecture overlooked a city washed bright after the storm. Valerie sat at the head of the table with Claire beside her, Priya attended by secure video. I waited in a separate conference room until the committee called me. Julian joined with his own attorney. He denied creating the deep fake and described his transfer proposal as a legitimate negotiation. Claire did not accuse his lawyer of complicity. She submitted the messages, the recording notice, the courier documents, and the active investigation number. Valerie spoke before anyone else could define the issue for her. "I am not asking this board to declare me innocent because I say so," she began. "I am asking it to preserve the company while independent experts test the allegation. I will cooperate with reasonable oversight. I will not surrender my shares or office because a former partner attached a deadline to an unverified file." Priya explained the synthetic indicators and the limits of her preliminary opinion. Claire described the requested interim measures. When I was called, I testified only about the communications Valerie authorized, Julian's stated demand, and the chain of decisions recorded at the cabin. The committee recessed for 40 minutes. During the wait, Valerie poured coffee from the boardroom carafe and tasted it. Her expression tightened. "Cabin coffee?" I asked. "Worse, this may qualify as retaliation." Claire hid a smile behind her folder. When the board returned, the chair read the resolution slowly. The board stayed automatic enforcement of the morality clause pending independent review. Valerie retained operational authority subject to temporary dual approval on restricted blueprint transfers. Julian's system access and voting authority were suspended while outside counsel investigated. The board also authorized the Reynolds signature with an independent director countersigning. It was not a final judgment. It was a safe bridge to one. Valerie signed the Reynolds documents beside the independent director before noon. The project continued. Employees received their work schedules. Julian left with his attorney and no public confrontation. After the meeting, Valerie found me near the elevators. "Your witness role is finished," Claire said, joining us. "The committee will contact you if it needs anything else." "Understood." Valerie held out her hand. "Thank you for staying inside the line." I shook it. "Thank you for drawing it clearly." For the next 6 weeks, the process moved through documents rather than dramatic threats. Priya's laboratory completed a full report confirming that the audio had been assembled from multiple source recordings. Investigators obtained account and cloud records through lawful process. The board's outside counsel interviewed employees, reviewed Julian's access history, and gave both sides an opportunity to respond. Claire updated Valerie, not me. I answered one written follow-up through the committee and returned to my regular negotiation work. 2 weeks after the board meeting, a message arrived on my personal phone. This is Valerie Morgan. You no longer represent me. Would you like coffee that's not evidence? I read it twice before answering. Yes, public cafe, Saturday at 10. Her reply came immediately. Approved. We met beneath the striped awning of a neighborhood cafe. No storm covered the windows. No burner phone sat between us. Valerie ordered cinnamon coffee and asked what I did on weekends when no one required de-escalation. I repair crooked bookshelves, I said. Without written authorization? Never again. She laughed, and the conversation moved into places that had nothing to do with her company. She told me she collected old postcards of buildings that no longer existed. I admitted that I cooked one excellent meal and 6 acceptable ones, when the cups were empty. She asked whether I wanted to walk another block. I did. Our second date was at a small architecture exhibit. The third was dinner with Claire, who spent 10 minutes confirming that my engagement had truly ended before allowing the conversation to become friendly. The fourth involved a bookstore, a sudden shower, and Valerie buying an umbrella large enough for 2 people without calling it a security measure. On the 5th Saturday, Valerie visited the negotiation training center where I volunteered with new emergency dispatchers. She sat behind the observation glass while I coached a trainee through a simulated workplace standoff. The exercise ended when the trainee stopped filling every silence and allowed the caller to speak. Afterward, Valerie waited beside the vending machines with 2 paper cups. This one claims to be coffee, she said. I cannot independently verify it. I tasted mine. Strong indicators of synthetic composition. She laughed, then glanced through the glass at the empty training room. You teach people to leave space for another person's decision. Is that why you noticed every time I needed a choice at the cabin? It is why I tried to notice. I still entered your room without knocking. And you stepped out before asking me to excuse it. The vending machine hummed between us. I had spent years treating every pause as a puzzle. But Valerie did not need a perfect response. I'm learning that correcting a mistake matters more than defending it. I said. That answer passes. Our relationship developed through small, repeatable choices, she asked before bringing work to dinner. I told her when a call might interrupt an evening instead of disappearing behind professional silence. When she needed legal reassurance, she called Claire rather than turning me into a substitute attorney. When I began analyzing the expression of a waiter who had merely forgotten our bread, Valerie slid the menu over my notebook. Off duty, she said. He avoided eye contact. He is 19 and carrying 6 plates. The bread arrived 30 seconds later. Valerie looked pleased with herself. Your competing hypothesis was stronger, I admitted. Put that in the record. Meanwhile, the company's process continued without using our dates as evidence of anything. Claire sent updates through official channels. Priya's laboratory documented each source recording. Outside counsel interviewed the board members who had received Julian's earlier complaints. The Reynolds client received weekly status notices approved by the audit committee, not private assurances from Valerie. At the end of the 5th week, Claire warned that the share dispute might continue even if the board removed Julian from management. The employment decision and the ownership process are separate. She said during a meeting Valerie later summarized for me, the bylaws control his office. The shareholder agreement controls valuation and buyback. Arbitration may take months. Valerie accepted that distinction. She asked the board to protect operations without pretending one vote could settle every legal issue. That choice made the eventual resolution less dramatic, but far more durable. At the end of the 6th week, Morgan North's board completed its process based on the forensic report, preserved demands, account records, and findings from outside counsel. The directors removed Julian from his executive role for cause under the bylaws. His disputed shares entered the contractual buyback and arbitration process. They did not simply vanish at a punitive price. Investigators referred their completed file to prosecutors, who would decide any charges independently. The board confirmed Valerie's authority and removed the temporary dual approval restriction. The Reynolds project remained active. An independent procurement committee selected a security firm with no connection to me to implement new executive safeguards. Valerie made one final public statement to her employees. "No single consultant saved this company," she said. "Claire protected our legal process. Priya tested the evidence. The audit committee preserved operations. Investigators preserved accountability. I chose not to sign away our future under threat." She did not mention our relationship until the workday ended. That evening, the firm hosted a small reception in the model gallery. I arrived as her invited guest, not as a contractor. Claire stood near a scale model of the Reynolds Civic Center, holding a cup of coffee and pretending not to monitor the room. Valerie crossed the gallery toward me. She did not offer a key card, a retainer, or access to her office. She simply took my hand in front of Claire and several colleagues. "Everyone," she said, "this is Elias. He was once my consultant. That engagement ended weeks ago. Now he is the man I'm dating because I asked him for coffee and he said yes." Claire lifted her cup. Accurate and properly disclosed. Laughter moved through the gallery. Valerie's hand remained in mine because she had chosen to place it there. The following Saturday, she invited me back to the remote cabin. The forest was bright beneath a clear sky, and the access road stood open. We went without security equipment, board files, or burner phones. Claire had already returned the evidence device to secure storage after the legal hold transferred. At the cabin, we opened the windows and let the rooms air out. Valerie checked the repaired latch herself. I carried firewood only after she pointed to the stack she wanted moved. When I reached automatically for the encrypted tablet in my bag, I found the green notebook I used for grocery lists instead. "No perimeter software?" she asked. "No active engagement." "What happens if a squirrel approaches the porch?" "We assess whether it has controlling shares." She laughed and handed me a mug of coffee. This time, the raw wood table held a deck of cards, 2 bowls of soup, and the postcard she had discovered behind the bookshelf. No evidence labels divided the surface. Inside the guest room, the folded wool blanket rested neatly at the foot of the bed. Valerie pointed to the repaired window latch. "No false alarm this time." I knocked on the open door frame anyway. "May I come in?" "Yes." She held up a postcard she had found behind the crooked bookshelf. It showed the cabin when it was first built, its tin roof shining beneath new pine trees. "How much did you see that first night?" she asked. "A burner phone, one frightened CEO, and a boundary I needed to repair immediately." "And now?" I looked past her toward the clear window, then back at the postcard in her hand. "A woman who kept every decision that belonged to her." Valerie placed the postcard on the dresser and stepped closer, leaving space between us. "May I kiss you?" she asked. "Yes." The kiss was brief and warm. When we drew apart, rain did not hammer the roof, no alarm flashed, and no deadline waited beneath a blanket. From the kitchen, the coffee maker beeped. Valerie smiled. "That is the only alert you are authorized to answer." Scope confirmed. We walked back to the main room together. She poured the coffee. I opened the curtains, and sunlight spread across the raw wood table where the evidence log had once been. The cabin was still remote. The company was still hers. My work remained my own. What we shared had begun only after the crisis, the contract, and the power imbalance were over. For the first time in years, silence did not feel like information I needed to decode. It was simply a quiet morning beside someone who had chosen to stay. The end. Closing thoughts. Core lesson. Truth needs careful evidence and a fair process, especially when fear creates pressure to act too quickly. Green flag: Elias respects Valerie's consent, stays within his professional role, and leaves every legal and corporate decision in her hands. Their romance begins only after his engagement ends and Valerie chooses him freely. Like and subscribe. If you enjoyed this wholesome romance, you please like the video and subscribe for more stories. Would you have answered Julian's recorded call or let Claire reply in writing?